there he is. There
Hello.
he is.
Would you like to join us? Would you like to come and say
I
hello?
love your bone throw. I think it's wonderful.
It,
I love it.
it, so, Teddy, darling, would you like? Have you got anything to say to our
Oh,
audience?
oh, okay. Okay. This is interesting.
So, what would you like to say? What would you like to say? Oh, okay. We're a bit quiet because we have just woken up. So, should we try that again? What would you like to say? No, there we go. And it's hello and welcome to Pet Talk with me, Anna, and who is a practitioner of Galen Myotherapy. Hello, Julia.
Hello. I'm sorry. I froze just then, so I didn't hear what you said, but hello. Hello. Lovely, lovely to meet you.
Well, we did an introduction and we have discovered that you are a practitioner of Galen Myotherapy. So
Indeed.
I think it might be a good idea to fill our audience in on what it is that that means.
Okay. Well, Galen myotherapy, if Galen was the name we took from a Greek medical guy, as we were just discussing, but the myotherapy bit, that's the important bit. Myo meaning muscle and therapy. So it's muscle therapy. So we work on the physicality of the dog. So we use massage techniques and we work within the soft tissue or work on the soft tissue. So we work on muscle, but we also work on something else, which is fascia, which it may be something that you know or you don't know, but it's basically the white stuff that joins muscles to connect together, and it basically joins our body up. It is the most incredible stuff. So if you have muscle or myofascial dysfunction, it really can affect your movement and your overall health.
That is just an amazing skill that you have because you're able to look at a dog, assess
Yeah.
anything going on there. So clearly you're very practiced at this. How do you do this? Do you do it through touch or are you actually able to see whether there's anything going on there?
It's a fantastic question, that, because it's basically both and everything. So our initial assessment is quite often a written one. So we ask about a dog's behavior. So before we actually treat a dog, we ask about various different behaviors that may indicate that there may be an issue with the dog. So that's our first one, is we have feedback from our client. The second one would naturally be that we would see the dog. So when we go to someone's home or they come to us in our own clinical practice, we watch the dog, and we don't do what a lot of people might consider is a normal gait assessment or a movement assessment. All we do is watch how the dog moves around the environment. So I've got quite a small room just behind me where I work. So I watch how a dog moves around, turns a corner, how they coordinate their body to turn a corner, how they coordinate to go up and over a step, or how they stand. So it's all about how their body is positioned. And then on top of that, their posture. So we look at how they're balancing their body. Because like all of us, if we've got something that is uncomfortable, we will want to shift that off and offload it onto another part of our body. And that begins a cycle. And that's where we really come in. And that's what we are sort of experts at, is assessing this cycle. So we first hear or we read about what might be going on, then we watch, and then we do place our hands on, but we use a choice-led treatment protocol. So we encourage the dog and invite the dog to join us on our treatment area. So maybe even before touch, it comes down to the connection and the intention. And I'm sure you would agree with me that putting across an intention of doing good, helping, working with, not inflicting upon, is massive when you are interacting with anyone. And when you're interacting with a dog, they're very perceptive, aren't they, to intention and body language and all of those things. So we have to be very positive with our body language. In other words, we have to be very inviting to invite them to join us. And then if we have the privilege to put our hands on to actually feel how they feel, that's incredible. But we always give a dog thinking time too.
There's so much in what you just said there. And I'm just struck by the idea of intention, which is so huge.
Huge.
And they are so sensitive. They absolutely do pick up.
Absolutely.
But I think it might be good to get a sense of how you encourage the dog. So how would you do that? Are you using food to lure? What? But I suspected not. You're dead. So what are you doing?
Okay, well, the big thing we use a protocol called Positive Pact, and it's very, there are several aspects within it, but one thing is it is developing a dog's autonomy. So they've got to have free choice. So if you involve a treat, of course, that removes free choice, doesn't it? So they are then focused on the treat rather than what your intention is. So it is quite difficult to explain, isn't it? But we have, and it's very important that we have a dedicated treatment area. So I work on a futon because I find it for myself more comfortable just to sit on something quite low, but I find it difficult to sit on the floor. But it has to be low enough so a dog can easily enter and exit any size. So that works well for all dogs. So that is the area. So I sit on the area and I physically say, come and join me. Come and join me. And then I sit back. Dogs know, they know. And if they feel safe, and that's the other thing, that's another big word, is safety, isn't it? If they feel safe in that environment, they will they're generally naturally curious and they will come and see you. And what the important thing is that the guardian is there too. Now, we call the dog's owner the guardian because owner's a funny word, isn't it? We don't own them. We look after them, or do they look after us? I can't work out which way round it is, actually. But the guardian has to be there for their emotional support, not to tell them what to do, but their emotional support. So whatever decision they make, the guardian's there to go, that's good, well done. You are choosing what to do. So that's great. And that's a really important facet to this. So we have the guardian sat there in a supportive role, but non-directional. And then the therapist or myself sat there on one end of the treatment area, encouraging them to join me. And inevitably, they do. So let's just talk about a dog that has got is being looked after as far as any pain is concerned. So they are uncomfortable, their movement isn't great, but they're not in deep pain, because any dog that's in deep pain will not want to be touched. And that's another good way of knowing if they need to go back to the vet and have their medication reviewed. So the normal sort of dog we see are dogs that are suffering from movement compensation. So they're very stiff and maybe just creaking a little bit like we are. So they're very happy to come up and see us. And at this point, we take a breath, because it's really important just to give the dog a little bit of thinking time. They've joined us. If they join us and you suddenly put your hands on, they go, what on earth are you doing? So we just take a breath and then allow them to just sit there, and then we just place our hands on, and then we're showing the intention that you're here. When you sit next to us, we're going to put our hands on you. And that's where the intention then becomes a reality. Now, sometimes at this point, a dog will go, no, I'm not sure, and walk away. That's fine. And then they have to think about it. And that could be doing quite a bit of sniffing. It's a different type of sniffing, but we let them, and we don't direct them back. We invite them back, and then they come back again. We have a breath, and then we start again. And I would say 90% of the dogs that I've seen behave in that sort of way, but then get to know the power of their own choice and find that so emboldening to them, which is massive, because they choose. And the moment they leave the treatment area, we don't follow them. So it's a very small area, quite often. Sorry, I've given you a lot of words there. I've given you a lot of words.
It's fantastic, because you really built the picture of how you are doing this, which essentially comes down to you're building trust.
Totally.
And how
Absolutely.
and how could anyone trust if they're being coerced? So there's no force here, and that's what enables them to trust you, because you're not making any demands on them.
No.
And think about it, when we're sensitive, when we're in pain, we are very, very sensitive.
Yes.
So
yes.
So it makes complete sense. And I'm just thinking about how different that approach is to taking our dogs to see a vet, or the groomer, where they're on tables. It's just, you could feel how tense and afraid they often are, so many of them. So I think this is a beautiful approach. And I remember an article by the wonderful Amber Batson some time ago, where she was talking exactly about how to introduce this into veterinary practice. It would make such a huge difference to our animals if we had this approach. So might not be so practical, vets would say, but
it's different. I think, to be fair, it would be lovely to have more of a choice approach, but they're having to do a lot more different things, and it is different, but it'd be lovely if there was a bit more autonomy for the dog. And as far as grooming is concerned, there are a lot of groomers now, aren't there, that are actually using very different methods, very different. So what's so interesting is this: we've been doing this for years and years, this choice-led treatment. And what's so wonderful is there are so many more people now, different professions, that are going, this really does work. And so it's more of a culture of change, rather than just us doing this with our myotherapy. Hello, Teddy. No, bored now.
Yeah. He thought the voice was very interesting.
Oh, good. But he's now gone back to sleep again.
So it's so crucial, this, because, as you say, it's about changing the culture, and helping people to understand that animals really need to be given that freedom and to be trusted to make the right choice.
Absolutely.
They want to. I think dogs on the whole want to collaborate. And you are the second myotherapist who we've had on Pet Talk, because we also had the wonderful conversation with Sindhu Pangal.
Oh, Sindhu.
Different subject.
Yeah.
But I remember her talking about how if dogs see other dogs having the treatment, they often want to come and do it too. And it's almost like they're queuing, waiting.
Not almost. They queue. I've had many times when they queue. It's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And what you're saying is absolutely right. And it's very perceptive of you to get into the real sort of feeling behind what we do so quickly. And we like to say that we're trying to create a culture, not a cult. The two are very, very different. So this culture of change is really important, really important.
Okay, so we have a really good idea of how you are creating an atmosphere in which the dogs want to come and have treatment.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just go back to pain because they're so stoic. It's, and they have to be
Crazy.
in agony, before we kind of know that they're in pain.
Yeah.
How can we? And you were talking about watching the way they move. And ever since I saw your interview with Andrew Hale,
All right.
I've been watching Teddy like a hawk. The problem is that I have no comparison to make because I've started now. So lately, I've been watching him as he's running, and I've noticed that as he's slowing down, he does this little hop, and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, is your right the paw on your back paw on the right okay? Because you're doing this little hop as you're slowing down, and I have no idea if he's always done that or if this is something new. So for for those of us who are wanting to learn more about what we might consider to be normal movement so that we have an idea of whether our dogs are beginning to have an issue anywhere. Where do we go? How do we do this?
Well, it's a fantastic question, and it's not a simple answer, of course. But how I would start would be with the posture. So the static posture, rather than try and look at movement, which can be very complex, look at posture. And the best way of assessing anyone's posture, and most of all your dog's posture, is when they're in a relaxed state. So not when, is Teddy interested now?
Yes.
Oh, he's interested now. Right. Okay, that's good. I've said something that obviously he finds more interesting. He was finding the whole treatment thing a little soporific, maybe.
Well, maybe getting himself into a little bit of a relaxed state.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be
nice.
So I would try and assess them, and I love photographs rather than video many times. So if you just observe your dog when they are just standing, not looking in an alert way, just standing, and look at how their legs line up. Now, I've got it's not a rule because there are no rules, but I've got something, a bit of a guideline, is I call it the 2x2x2 rule. So when you're looking at a dog sideways, you should only see two legs, because the other two, so if you're looking at the front and the back legs, you should not see the other front and the back legs. You should only see two legs. If you go to the front of your dog and they're just standing in a relaxed way, you should only see the front legs, because the back legs should pretty much be behind the front legs. And likewise, if you go to the back, the same. So it's the 2x2x2 guidelines. That's a really good way of starting. But then also you can look at how they hold their head. A dog's head carriage should be nice and relaxed, and it should be not high, but it most certainly shouldn't be low. So it's looking at their whole shape. But I think really looking at foot placement and leg alignment is a really good way to start. Because if whatever's going on in their body is going to reflect through their legs and ultimately into their feet. And we do some very detailed assessments into feet, nails, pads, the loading on each foot, to be able to get a really good idea of where they're offloading and onloading to, which can give us a good idea of where to start with the treatment. Because the other thing about our treatments, we don't look for painful places. We look to unwind the painful places. I'm going to say something. Anyone can find a painful place. That's not clever. What's clever is unwinding it, so you don't actually have to treat it. It unwinds itself. So this is why posture for us is so important too. But for anyone looking at their own dog, I would look at leg alignment. That would be a really good place to start.
That's absolutely brilliant. And I love the fact that you're talking about not going straight to the point of pain, but finding it, because that makes so much sense. Nobody wants to be touched where they feel most sensitive
And vulnerable.
but to address the wider area,
yeah,
relax everything, wouldn't it? And
absolutely.
You eventually that desensitizes perhaps and allows you to get there.
Exactly, because basically when us or dogs or horses or any species become compromised in their movement, they get shorter. So what we're doing is giving the body space for the more reformed physiology to take over and the cells to be able to metabolize better, and then things to move, just a bit more movement between cells as well as between joints. So we're looking at more movement holistically through the dog. So by understanding their posture, we can then, and their biomechanics, which are really important, we can then unwind them from a point that actually they welcome the treatment, because that is where it's a bit like you. If your shoulder's bad, someone's going to come and rub your shoulder. You think, oh, that is so good. That really helps. But if it's coming from your back, that may not be such a nice area for you to have a treatment initially. But to have your shoulders treated will help ease the load and the strain through your back.
Well, Juliet, listening to you makes me want to come to you myself. You know,
well, that's very nice.
It's tension, isn't it, as well? Some of this tension, for one reason or another, that builds in the body.
Yeah.
And you are basically kind of working with the tissue. That's like a deep tissue massage, gentle deep tissue massage, which is very interesting. How does this differ from
Can I just say that we're not always working that deeply, because it's more of a synergistic effect. So we are trying to influence a lot. I mean, yeah, we do work deeply at times, but it's not always as deep as you think. And a technique like skin rolling, which is literally lifting the skin and rolling it, which can be a very uncomfortable thing, can do huge amounts for the dog's whole mobility. So again, it's understanding the anatomy and the functional anatomy to know how to start the unwinding of that dog. So we do both, but it's not always deep. It's not always deep.
I actually was thinking deep as in not in the intensity,
profound,
but profound. That's what I.
Fair enough. Yeah, absolutely.
That was more the, and I was just wondering how this technique differs from T-touch.
Now, I've never studied T-touch, but I do know that it's circles, and it's more on a peripheral neurological perspective, isn't it? It's trying to influence different movements and actions through different. Now, they do a skin rolling too, which I think is I think they call it tarantula or something like that, which, it's just such a good technique. But what they also do, they look at the dog's balance, don't they? And try and incorporate very natural style of exercises, functional movement, which is very similar to what we do too. So they're very different because they work on the surface, but all these things connect. It's like, what do we do? Why some of the things that we do have the same effects as some Eastern acupuncture? It's because we're working over these same lines and these same areas that are profound within our health and our mobility, which of course the two go together, don't they?
Absolutely. So we've talked about posture. We've talked about the type of work that you're doing. I guess the other question, which might be on a lot of people's minds, is how do I know if my dog is in pain? And I think it's the reason why you're asking about behavior, but it'd be good to hear more about that.
Okay, it's a very simple thing that you can do. Well, I think it's quite simple. If you've had your dog for a little while, say for instance, Teddy, if you said Teddy's 8, is that right? And did you have him as a puppy?
Yes. Yes.
So the good thing to do is to get a picture of him, take a picture of him, or sorry, not take a, well, yes, take a picture of him, but find a picture of when he was adolescent or just a little bit older than adolescent, 2 to 3. And if you've got a nice side picture, lateral shot of him, put it on the fridge. And then get a picture of him now and compare the posture. And have a look at where the feet are and have a look at the head carriage, because Teddy is unique, like every dog is unique. And that's one really good way of looking at the posture. So that's one way that you can see if there's any shift of loading, balance. Are they more overdeveloped now in their shoulders than they used to be? If your dog's wearing a collar, if the collar's getting tight and they're not putting on weight, that could be because they're load shifting onto the front too. So that can be a real indication as well. Other things, it's things that they're stopping doing. Like most dogs play to some degree. And I hear so often, oh, my dog's 6, they don't want to play anymore. It's a fundamental of us all to want to have fun and play. So if your dog has stopped doing something like playing, is not looking as excited about certain activities, walks, things that used to really excite them, because we all know that if a dog wakes up and they're breathing in oxygen, it's a wonderful day. But if they're waking up and they're going, and they're a bit stiff when they get out of bed, they're reluctant to do things, or even that they are becoming a little more clumsy, because I'm sure you know yourself, well, I most certainly do know for me, if I've got a back problem or a hip pain or something, I try, or a neck, more likely to be my neck, I cut corners because I don't want to go all around the table. I try and so I quite often walk into things because I'm more focused on getting there step by step by being careful about how I get there. And dogs are the same, they can become quite clumsy. So it's these changes in behaviors when they lie down, if they groan, or if they get up and they're a bit stiff. All these things can indicate, I'm not going to say pain, I'm going to call it diminishing comfort, because pain is so evocative. People go, oh, my dog's in pain. No, they're probably uncomfortable, but it's a cycle. So if they're a bit uncomfortable, that will progress. It never stays the same. It will always just get worse and worse and worse because of how the body then compensates to accommodate that discomfort. We'll then get another discomfort because that one's overloaded. So then they'll offload and that will become, so it is a cycle.
How can we, or what kinds of activities might be detrimental to a dog's posture, or might be putting strain on their skeletal system? What should we beware that we need to either avoid or limit? I'm just thinking about, I guess what's coming to mind is, when people get their dogs to stand on their hind legs and, walk like that or that kind of thing. I've always thought, is that a problem? I'm just wondering, what kind of thing do we encourage our dogs to do that perhaps we ought to not encourage or limit?
Yeah. Well, there are a couple of, I would say, absolute definites, which is we must not have slippery floors for our dogs. It's one of the worst things. And slippery floors are wooden floors. I've got wooden floors and I've got gorgeous non-slip rugs down. I don't care. They may be ugly, but they become very beautiful, these rugs, because they are saving your dog. That's probably one of the most detrimental thing to a dog's physicality are slippery floors. Their feet are just not designed to walk on slippery floors. So that is an absolute please. Or put a track down so they can walk round the track, and where they drink and where they eat must have good traction. So that's a definite. All the other things, I mean, ball throwing, I would definitely say, please don't, because it can become psychologically almost, oh, what's the word? Addictive, that's the word. They become addicted to it, which is detrimental, and it really can affect their behavior, but it has very damaging effect on their body too, very. And that's because of the repetitive nature of it. The repetitive stopping, twisting, turning, stopping, twisting, turning. So really anything that is repetitive like that can be really detrimental. So going back to your question, if a dog walks on their back legs, if they do that a lot, then it can. If they do it occasionally, but the rest of the time they've got their head down and they're sniffing and they're walking slowly, probably not. So it's about balancing these things. So anything repetitive will have an issue or will have detrimental issue on them, just like us.
I've been thinking of late that Teddy always walks on my right and consequently is often looking up, always on that side. And I've been encouraging him. I've been teaching him left and right. And the way I've been doing that is when we're walking together, I'm getting him to walk on my left.
Yep.
So I left and he comes on my left, just to try to stop it being always on the right. Am I right in thinking that that could also be problematic if that's a repetitive thing where you're holding that position?
Exactly. But that sort of position goes through the whole body. It's not just the neck. It rotates everything. And you just need to do that yourself. And it will rotate all the way through your body. And that will have an effect. So even those little things are really important. And what is so important to do for a dog, rather than not to do necessarily, but the couple of really important things to do is let your dog sniff. A dog needs their head down. Their head down in a natural head carriage will help to engage all the muscles through the body to maintain a stability and flexibility through their whole body. And especially if they're sniffing and they're moving in different directions and around a tree, maybe, all those multi-directional movements, but at a slow pace, are really, really powerful.
Yes, I would say that. And this is one of the reasons why the majority of Teddy's walks by far are off lead.
Yeah.
So because I want him to be able to sniff, roll, all the things he loves to do.
Yeah.
And that's so huge. So and I recognize that the value in that is that he is relaxed. He's relaxed. He's happy. And it's a huge, huge thing. But what you're talking about, that head down position, because everything goes kind of floppity in a way. Floppity, but I think
it's back to this myofascial connections. It's really important. The head influences the pelvic region. It has a massive effect on the pelvic region. So if your head's down, it will help activate the muscles that help stabilize the hips. So that's really, really important. So that sort of thing is critical. And so many times I hear people, not so much now, because I think sniffing now and slow movement is becoming much more of a culture, a thing. but often people have said to me, but he won't stop sniffing and we're going for a walk. Well, whose walk is it? If you're taking your dog for a walk, then it's the dog's walk. If you're going for a walk, then maybe you go for a walk, but you don't take your dog.
Precisely. I think you're quite right. I always say this is Teddy's walk. He gets to do what he wants to do. I think that if I'm in a hurry getting to the car, I often say to him, walk now, sniff later. And he gets it. He walks quickly.
But you struck a deal. You struck a deal.
Yes, that's what I say to him. I say, walk now, sniff later. But if it's a walk, like a pavement walk, then no, he dictates everything.
Exactly.
As far as I'm concerned. So I'm just thinking about, you talked about slippery floors, but I'm also thinking about the jumping off sofas.
Yeah.
And jumping off, out of the car as well.
Yeah.
With the sofa, it's at home, we can control that. We could put something soft. But what would you say about the car? Because obviously we are parking on tarmac and they're coming out. So if it's happening once a day, is twice a day going home, is that repetitive enough, or do we need more repetition during it in one day for it to be an issue?
The height of most cars now are so high that it's a big jump down. So it would be quite unnatural for a dog to be doing that a couple of times a day naturally. So I would try and avoid that if possible. Now, I've got 2 Labradors and I'm relatively strong, so I help them in and out of the car. Steps, ramps, great, but we all know how difficult they are to assemble, and we have to introduce our dogs early to them. I mean, they're brilliant, but I do help them in and out of the car, because it's not just out, it's also in, because they can really have to pull themselves up into the car. But if not, then I would definitely suggest a ramp or park somewhere so they don't have such a big jump out of the car. So if that's at all possible, because if you look at it from a relative perspective, it could be almost like we're jumping off a 4 or 5 foot high wall every day, which is quite high. And especially if you've been for a walk, and especially if you've been for an active walk and you're a bit tired, then you don't absorb the ground so well. So you may land on one foot more than the other more, and then that becomes a bit of a habit. So definitely jumping out of the car, I would look to manage that. I really would.
Excellent. That's been crossing my mind, since hearing that interview with you. Other thing is stairs, because so many of us have stairs in our homes.
Yeah.
And I think about stairs a lot because Teddy does not like them. Where do stairs fit in terms of how we can safeguard injury on stairs?
I think it's a very good question, and this is not going to be a straightforward answer. So stairs are quite complex. So it very much depends on what your dog is used to. So first of all, let's look at the biomechanics of a dog going up stairs. It's not a natural thing for them to do, but going up, they generally can manage that. That's not too bad. And especially if you're close to them, I would never encourage a dog to be going up and down stairs, but some dogs love to go to bed with their guardians in their room. And if they didn't, that would be really stressful. So we have to accommodate that, because to suddenly be separated because you're not allowed to go up the stairs is just that's not going to happen, quite frankly. So we've got to work out the best way of doing it. So I would suggest that they go up and down the stairs as little as possible. So if your dog is always following you as you go up and down, try to limit that. But to actually get them upstairs or to help them upstairs, that's one thing. But it's the downstairs that people overlook massively. And the dog's back end, and this is interesting when you were talking about Teddy doing that hop when he's slowing down, the pelvic region, their hind legs are the brakes. That's their brakes. So if their brakes are a little bit compromised, which that's the area that most dogs start to lose a bit of function first, going down the stairs is really difficult. So what they do is go down really quickly because they can't stop. So people say, oh, they have no problem going down the stairs. It's because they can't stop. So if anything breaks their stride, so if there's something on the stairs, or if something happens where they have to redirect, they've got no chance. So we've got to be really careful with our dogs going downstairs. It's much more of an issue than going up. So really, it would be best to lessen the amount of stairs going up and down from different floors in the house you could do, really, because it's a coming down that is quite concerning. But also, if you're going to help your dog down the stairs, you've got to be careful yourself. I don't want anyone to be injured, obviously, by helping their dog. So it really is looking and managing the situation to ensure safety for all.
What about putting carpet on the stairs? Does that help?
Anything that gives them more traction is going to help. Going up and down wooden stairs would be really difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, because these are all things that are in our daily lives.
Mm.
We're thinking about safeguarding our dogs so that they are healthy and free from joint pain, etc.
Yeah.
Are the things that we need to be thinking about. So you've given us so much food for thought. Now, one last question. If people want to work with you, aren't, because they are miles away from you, what do you do?
Quite easy, actually, because I've got a story. I don't know if you want to hear, but we've got something called the Distance Support Program, which is incredibly popular and really successful and I'm so proud of it, because anyway, let me tell you the little story how it came about. Very short. But I've been very lucky that I've been invited all over the world to go and talk to people about their dogs and everything. And this was primarily before COVID. Of course, things have slightly changed now. And we've got this wonderful thing called Zoom. So we can talk to so many more people. Anyway, I was actually in Taiwan, and I was talking to this wonderful audience of people that really were just taking in all this information. And this girl came up to me after and said, Julia, I loved your talk, and everything you talk about, my dog is demonstrating that. I went, oh, what can I do about it? I thought at that point that was really unethical of me to be going out telling people what's wrong without actually, I mean, I gave them some information, but without giving them help, how they could help their dog. So I kept in contact with this girl, and I helped her and her dog remotely. So that was the beginning of our distance support program. So basically, if someone can't contact a myotherapist and is interested in helping their own dog and feels that there's a problem, if you go on our website, there are two things. There's a distance support program or a distance support plus. And it basically involves you sending videos and photos of your dog. You get a postural report and a program of how to apply two massage techniques for your dog. And if it's a plus, also some exercises too, very specific for your dog. So you're supported through this, through video links or links like this, if that's better. And then we also, at the end, we do a 6-week review, and the differences in these dogs are huge, because we don't just look at the dog, but we look at the environment, the type of exercise, the harness, whatever, everything that impacts on this dog, we have a look and we give the people advice. So that is something that we do offer, and it's very kind of you to to mention that.
I think it's huge because we barely understand our own bodies, let alone the body of another species.
Mm.
Most people really want to support their dogs.
Yes, they do.
And this is information that's like gold dust because they don't know what to look for,
Yep.
or how to go about
Yeah.
Sorting things out. So I think this is wonderful. And what you do, I just love what you do. Thank you so much for your time today.
Can I just add one thing on what you've just said? This for us to, and again, I hate this word, it's a bit corporate, but empower people to be able to help their own dog. It takes their relationship with the dog to another level, because then their dog can go up to them and go, I'm a bit sore here. And they understand. And it's like it's broken down another barrier of communication. So it works on many different levels, this. And I love it because it gives people that information to be able to help their own dog, and they don't need to rely solely on someone else. And I think that's great.
It's the most precious thing that we do, is build that level of trust and understanding. And that means we need to be confident ourselves in our ability to help our dogs.
Yes.
So the beauty of what you do. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And meet Teddy.
Who is now asleep. So if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
The best is through our website, which is galenmyotherapy.com. And then you can go on a chat, or you can email, or you can contact us through there. But that's the best way of finding us.
I'll make sure that link is in the description box.
Thank you very much indeed, Anna. Thank you.
And thank you all for watching. Until next time. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.